I regret that it has to be so much in the US, but the US, to be honest, is extraordinarily powerful in venture capital. It raises a lot more money. It has a lot more enterprises. The quality of the whole industry is much higher. The society is more attuned to investing in risky enterprises, in forgiving people who failed. No, the whole culture, the existence of the great research universities, which is critical to venture capital. The US has a death grip on the great research university, and a handful of others tend to be in the UK. But so it's very hard to avoid the US in venture capital. And I think, as you know, venture capital is far and away the most healthy part of modern capitalism. It really does something useful. It's in full cry, companies starting everywhere. And in the green area, really important, promising new technologies springing out of the woodwork at all the great universities. And if you look at the FANGs, they were all the product of the US VC industry. They're all pretty recent companies when you get down to it. These are not offshoots of the Procter & Gamble's and the Exxons. Even Microsoft and Apple started when my firm at GMO was starting. So these are not old enterprises, and the rest are teenagers. Wilf, I've got to admit that ESG is kind of complicated and basically over my pay grade. As I like to say at a conference, you know, S&G, what's not to like? Good behavior. Who doesn't love good behavior? But E is about our survival. If we don't fix the E, our society as we know it will start to crumble. And my God, have we seen some really lousy weather since we last spoke? The floods and fires all around the world. The fires in the north of Russia were bigger than all the rest of them added together in the world, which included the biggest California fires ever recorded. So the weather is going to hell. Everybody is beginning to recognize the dangers of climate change. The governments quite suddenly in the last 18 months are getting behind it. I would say in the public tradable markets that greening the economy, decarbonizing the whole industrial system, it's the biggest challenge we have ever faced, really. It will take many trillions of dollars, and it will dominate the investment opportunities of the future in the tradable market and in the venture capital market. In the venture capital market, when did you have an industry with such a following wind that every government is thinking about it? Most governments are working on bringing in carbon taxes, which will make half of the VC investments we see suddenly much more viable. We absolutely need a carbon tax, and around the world, they're coming in fairly thick and fast, and China introduced one in the last 6 months.
What do you say when you see the likes of Exxon or BP embrace ESG? Does that make you tempted to then buy the stocks or not?
No, it makes me very nervous about greenwashing, of course. These are the guys who've tried to persuade us that climate change was no problem, and they knew very well since the 1970s it was. They probably cost us 10, 15, 20 years of absolutely precious time, because we are going to, through technology, we're going to get out of these problems one day. We will have plenty of cheap green energy. We'll have plenty of cheap green storage, one way or the other. We will decarbonize the steel industry, and the plastics will be replaced by bioplastics that will grow. The problem is time. We're just taking too long, and the damage building up in the environment is getting to be already very painful. And before we finish this, the 415 parts per million of carbon dioxide that we have, up from 280 in the last 200 years, It's going to go to 550. We are going to go sailing through 2 degrees centigrade. And we've seen the damage that happens at 1.1. And it's geometric. It doesn't increase. You don't get twice the damage at 2 degrees that you get at 1 degree. You probably get 4 or 5 times the damage. And at 3 degrees centigrade, perish the thought, which we may get to, you'll have another 5 or 10 times the damage. It really is a serious threat. We really have to address it, and we are beginning to address it on a global basis. And the critical problem that we can't replace is time. And these Exxon guys, they cost us 10 or 15 years, and Lord knows, I hope one day they pay for it. Warning signs of a bubble breaking. You find the stocks that have done the best, SPACs and particular SPACs and Tesla and Bitcoin. And you wait until they start to have these big daily drops, and then they recover and they drop and they recover. And that's the very early warning. And the market in 2000, for example, didn't go together. They took out the pet.coms and shot them. The rest of the market continued to go up. It didn't even deign to notice the shooting of those little guys. They were only worth scores of millions or a couple of $100 million. Then they took out the junior growth stocks and shot them, and the market kept going up. And then they took the medium growth stocks and shot them. And finally, by the summer, they were shooting the Ciscos. And the entire tech part of the market had been shot. And that had been 30% at the market peak of the total market cap. And yet the S&P by September was at the co-equal high of March, which meant that the other 70 had continued to rise. So that is a typical way. Bubbles don't necessarily break en masse, but having sliced off the tech and the dot-coms, then finally the 70%, like a giant iceberg, rolled over en masse, the 70%.